Yeah. Look out your window. Knicks fans is on your block. Y'all know the Knicks run the city. Pull them shades back. Look out your window. Look down there on the block. That's Knicks fans right there. It's about that time. It's about that time of the week where you get ready for your work week with the man that is so smooth he does not require a chaser. Your main man, the real, still the real Anthony D. And your main man, Jersey's finest, the hood representative, Uncle Freezy. Let's go. Anthony D is in the building. Party people in the place to be. What's good? I'm your number one chief rocker, Knicks Universe, your main man, Uncle Freezy. Welcome to this joint we call Old School Knicks. I am joined by the man that is so smooth. He does not require a chaser.
Anthony today I do.
In the building. Salute.
What's going on? Good morning, my brother, Uncle Freezy from another salute, Nick Nation, once again.
Salute.
Chat, I already know, David, I already know you coming with the nonsense today. Sherwin, Kenny, hit them up. Everybody, you step on in, please salute. Give a quick salute to the host with the most, Uncle Freezy.
Yeah, salute, y'all. And we have a big time show for y'all today. We are going to talk about the top 20 Knicks of all time, according to Anthony D and myself. This is not going to be all stat based, and it's not going to be all historic. Mostly about the greatest Knicks that we've seen and know about, right? So when you start talking about Richie Guerin and some others, I'm gonna be like, yeah. When you talk about the Maguires, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I don't know them, right? No disrespect to them, but I do know some people that may sneak onto the list.
But we gotta give them honorable mentions, though.
Right.
Some of these players, when you look up some of their stats, even though it's whatever, pre-whatever, their stats are ridiculous. What's my man's name? It's Knowles?
Yeah.
Amari broke his record for like 30s in a row. Like, I think he had 8 30s in a row. Amari, I think, had 9.
Yeah. In February, was it February 2011? Right before the Melo trade?
Right, literally right before the Melo trade, literally.
Yep.
Right. So kick it, and please let us know what y'all think as well. You know what I mean? Like, who's your top 20?
Yeah,
because we're gonna drive this car off the road.
You already know at some point, y'all already know at some point this thing is gonna fly off the rails. Now, here's the thing: it's a top 20. Keep in mind, everybody. It's a top 20 list and not a top 20 ranking, right? It's a top 20 list. It's not a top 20 ranking. So, yeah, man. So Anthony D, I don't know what it is about Sunday mornings, but this is ridiculous. Every Sunday morning I have the same issue. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close some of these browsers that I have open.
Okay.
I'm gonna close some of these browsers I have open and see if that helps with the video. Okay. All right. So everybody, before we do that, I wanna give my guy Anthony D a few moments to share.
Hey baby, tell me what's on your mind. Freezing my back up.
Hey, girl, I see you over there.
I see you right there. I'm about to make my way over.
Yes, I'm making my way back
over.
to you, babe.
Absolutely. No, I love that. That intro is smooth as heck. Oh my God. What's on my mind? All right, so I guess I get to go first with, who my I guess let's go back and forth, or if we agree. My number one is gonna be salute to my guy David Smith in the chat. It's gonna be Patrick Ewing.
Ooh,
he's my top. Let me do top 20. Ewing. Dylan.
yeah.
Why? He spits hot fire.
He spits hot fire.
But it's Ewing for me, number one. He's also my personal favorite. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you'll have people that you'll recognize is 1, 2, or whatever, and then you'll have somebody else that's going to be on the list that's going to be like one of my personal favorites, and they both are not going to be the same thing. But for you, he's my personal favorite, and he's the best player, and to me, that I've seen in franchise history. It's Ewing.
Right. No doubt. I don't know if you can do a respectable all-time Knicks list without having Pat Ewing at the very top. Right. I don't know if you can do a list without having Pat Ewing.
It doesn't even make sense to talk about it. If Ewing is not your very, very top, is either you have to question your basketball knowledge or your basketball knowledge for nickdom.
For nickdom, yep. Yeah.
Like, let's go there for nickdom. Like all of the jeers and the tears.
Yeah.
And from Ewing's side, and I think he deserved to build up these calluses because he's drafted in the first NBA lottery draft.
Yeah.
For a lot of people who don't remember, Patrick Ewing, as we're in the NCAA season and stuff like that, like he owned March.
Yeah.
You understand? Like when he's drafted in that May afternoon, the thought was you could put him and 4 other guys and we're going to the championship.
Yeah.
The Knicks hadn't sold out that quickly in years, if ever. The moment they drafted Ewing, the next day, everybody and their mama was online to get tickets.
Yep. In line.
That's the kind of magnitude he was. When you're coming from, I'm not even go back to his high school days because, I think he has like 2 losses in high school or some shit like that, some crazy, Yeah. But look at him as he NWAs the scene and he rips through the express himself.
Right.
And he's on the biggest stage against we didn't know was going to be the greatest player of all times, and he's blocking everybody's shot.
Everybody.
You understand? When you talk about shot blockers, and just when we have these discussions about what we want out of our center and what we're missing in today, and patrolling the paint and whatever, that man was a one-man wrecking crew in that game.
Yep.
Yeah. Coach told him anything comes near the basket, send it back.
Yep.
Doesn't even matter if it's a goaltending or not. Half of them weren't even goaltenders, but the referee had never seen anyone like that. Never seen someone sprint from one side of the court, get to the other side of the court, and catch it in midair.
Right.
So it was like, you know what? It got to be a goaltender because we've never seen anything like that.
Right.
Someone who's the first 12 shots, anything that was close, bang, bang.
Yeah.
It's like he was a goalie out there. Bang, bang.
Yeah.
So Ewing, from then, he's my pause, and he's my guy because when he gets to the Knicks finally, he's going through all of this, and some of you fans are probably in the chat or old enough to remember or probably even did that. threw his poster back at him when he falls on the floor. Obvious knee pains. Man had never been hurt before.
Yep.
Right? The knee is now going to be a chronic issue at 24 years old.
Ruined his career on the spot. Yep.
Well, it's absolute. People just don't understand. Like Ewing, every year from his rookie year on, would have to have cleanup surgery every freaking year.
Yep. Every year. And so what people don't realize towards when Pat got to his 30s, it wasn't just the knee. It was things like scar tissue and drainage every year from the procedure that he had when he was 24. So yeah. I want to add someone to the list, and I don't think it's an official list, right? I don't think it's an official list until you add this person.
He was in that era. You know, he's Kurt Warner before Kurt Warner.
Yep.
Story.
Yep.
He's in, was it Safeway?
Yeah.
You know, if you know John Stark's story, he went to a couple of colleges. He had some issues.
Yep.
You know, got kicked off a couple of teams. You know, if you remember John Starks, he's someone, especially young John.
Yeah.
You know, you can get it.
Yep.
You can absolutely catch it. And it's not until, you know, he did some soul searching like within himself and like, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna get another opportunity.
Yep.
So I better calm down.
Yeah. The thing about this guy, and in my experience, right? Because there are a lot of supremely talented Knicks before this guy, and there were a lot of extremely hard playing Knicks before this guy, right? But before John Starks, there was never a guy that if you came to the Garden, you better been on your best fucking behavior, right? John Starks was legitimately the guy that had a 10th of the talent of Jordan and Reggie Miller and Clyde Drexler and Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas and Mitch Richmond and Vince Carter's later on and Allen Houston's in Detroit and all these supremely talented shooting guards and guards that Starks had to not only defend, but was defended by them every night. And so John Starks, with a thimble full of talent, had a New York-sized heart in his chest. And if you remember New York Knicks basketball before John Starks, there were dudes that played hard. There were dudes, Darryl Walker played hard. Guys that played hard, right? But them playing hard and them getting championship results are two totally different things. And if you remember, before John Starks, during John Starks, and after John Starks, the Knicks were always looking for his replacement, and they could never get his ass off the floor. Before John Starks, we had a guard named Gerald Wilkins. He was the second round pick in the 85 draft. We drafted Pat Ewing first, and then Gerald Wilkins second.
Yes,
right?
It was.
And the day John Starks showed up in camp, you knew Gerald Wilkins was on the clock. From the time he went to the scorer's table in Chicago, and y'all might not remember this, but Michael Jordan was going for like, I think Michael Jordan had 19, or AD, what was it? Michael Jordan had what, 27 in the second quarter or some shit like that, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach looked up, he's like, give me somebody that's gonna stand up the mic. And it was like, John, come here. And John Starks got off the bench for the very first time. And when the first thing that how this rivalry started. Because remember, Chicago and New York were never rivals. Because when we were good, they were mid, right? And when we were good, they were bad. Salute to Bob Love and what's my guy name that used to coach the Jazz? Jerry Sloan.
Jerry Sloan.
Bob Love, Jerry Sloan, all them guys. They were always mid, but where the beef started, Jordan had 29 in like the second quarter, and our coach was like, just give me somebody that's going to just stand up to this guy. And they called John Starks off the bench, and John Starks was at the scorer's table. And I'll never forget thinking, because I watched it on replay. I didn't see the game live. I saw the box score first, and then I watched the game, right? Yeah, AD, you remember the columnist Mike Lupica?
Yes.
So I saw the box score. I read his article.
Shooting from the lip, right? That was the art. That was the name of his column.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so how this thing started with John Starks. John Starks enters the game, and John Starks says, "Hey, Mike, how you doing? My name is John." And he tried to dap up Mike, and Mike was like, "Hey, motherfucker, call me Mr. Jordan." And John Starks was like, "Who the hell this dude think he talking to?" Now, any other random would have been like, "Yes, sir."
Yes, sir. You want me to go stand in the corner until you tell me to play defense?
Any other random would have been like, "Yes, sir." Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Because back then you were taught, don't make Mike mad or he gonna go off for 70, right? John Starks stood up to that dude like, "Hey, bro, who you think you talking to?" And I think it was the first play or the second play, AD, I can't remember. Mike goes to the rim on, remember the "Come Fly With Me" dunks? Y'all remember those?
Oh yeah.
Where he had an easy dunk and he would come in to make the posters, and Starks fouled him and knocked him to the floor. And that's where it began.
Yeah.
And that's where it began. So if you're a Knicks fan, and you think that John Starks had like a mid type impact on the Knicks, his impact wasn't about just numbers. His impact was about a mentality that was established. That was 1990. That was 1990.
He used to torture John.
Yeah.
Because you're playing against a guy who's not just innately talented. He has all the gifts that God could give someone to play this sport, to be an athletic freak in this sport. But not only that, he puts the work in.
Yeah.
On top of that. So you're always like, you think you're a little bit better, and then you play against him and he's like, "No, I'm much better. Wait till Mike see this." Mike done been away from the game for a few months. He ain't see this kind of a little jump shot, whatever, and then he gives you a double nickel.
Yeah. Off talent alone,
he gives you a double nickel off of not playing on the biggest stage on your stage, in your house.
Yeah.
And you have to come back from that.
Yep.
That could ruin somebody.
Rules. Break all of. I'm not wearing 23. I'm wearing 45. I'm not wearing the black and white sneakers. I'm wearing the Jordan 11s. Yeah. I'm gonna do what I want to do when I come back in the Garden.
And you got to persevere through that.
Yep.
And not only on top of that, and this goes to Knicks management. At some point, they stopped believing in him.
Yep.
And how can I say that? Somebody would probably say in the chat, "Well, how could you say that?" Allen Houston is brought in at more money than John Starks ever made with the Knicks by far
in his life. Allen Houston made in 1 year.
Think about that.
96 made more money in that year than John Starks made in his career up to that point.
Think about that. Starks gets them to a finals, game 7.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, they're thinking, well, you're not good enough to get it there.
He's not the prototype. Remember this era. The prototype was 6'6" shooting guard, right? Starks wasn't that. Starks was barely point guard size for that.
But let me ask you this question, Freezy, because Starks is, I agree with Starks being on the list. Do you think the Knicks were right to move on from him?
Yes, but no. Right. See, because the thing is, by the time they traded Starks for Sprewell, think about how old Starks was.
No, I'm not even talking about the trade yet. I'm talking about when they get Houston, Starks takes the role immediately.
You're talking about his role.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you just
he goes to the bench and becomes sixth man of the year.
Sixth man of the year, yeah. And think about this. He was only 2 years removed from being an all-star.
If there's ever someone that you could look at and think, well, should have a problem with Allen Houston coming in, it should have been John. Not only did he not have a problem with him coming in, him and Allen also had a cell phone company together.
A relationship, bro.
Yeah. Business. Not only that, I've never heard. I was like, what? Y'all are boys like that?
Bro.
Y'all got into business almost immediately?
And that's the reason why John Starks is the second name that I had to add. See, because John Starks is not a former Knicks player. The two guys that, when you think about the Knicks, and the person that I'm going to add next, or that I think we'll both agree that should be next in the conversation, it's not just about what they did upon arrival. They are lifelong Knicks contributors, right? Like, you go to the game now and Starks is, see, you didn't have to repair a relationship like you did with Sprewell.
No.
Or repair a relationship like you had to do with Starberry, right?
No.
Starks was traded to Golden State and attended the NBA Finals. He attended the NBA Finals for the Knicks as another team's player.
Yeah.
This dude was a Golden State Warrior in the tunnel watching the Knicks play against the Spurs. Yeah. And if that don't tell you where that man's heart is, bro.
When he remember that first time when he came back? There's few times in my Knickdom history that the tears was there for him.
Bro, I'm telling you.
Because when he came, when they shined the light on him, yo, and he got just an immediate explosion of appreciation.
The crowd went
crazy,
bro.
And I think this is like while he's on the other team.
On the other team, yes. He wasn't even starting. He didn't even start for the.
If I remember correct, he's on the other team, and it's like they had to get no, we can't. The Knicks was going to honor him regardless, but it was like, wow, he really meant something, and he still does.
And he still does to this day. I never forget. But before we move on, I just want to say, I want to say this. John Starks. Like, people say Josh Hart has a lot of heart, right? Josh Hart plays hard. I'll give him that, right? But Josh Hart doesn't guard Anthony Edwards. Josh Hart doesn't guard SGA, right? Josh Hart doesn't guard Jason Tatum. Josh Hart doesn't guard Kyrie Irving, right? If Pat Ewing couldn't guard a player, Starks guarded him, regardless of position, size, whatever, right? Because when you think about this, there was a game where I think Clyde Drexler, I think it was 90, I think it was like right after the Dream Team, and Clyde Drexler was on his revenge tour. I think he was like on a heater because he felt like he should have. I think did Drexler make the dream team? I think did Drexler?
Yes.
Or was it?
No, Drexler on the dream team. Yeah.
Or was it Dominique Wilkins? So it may have been
Dominique didn't make it.
So it was Dominique Wilkins. Okay, so Dominique Wilkins was on like a revenge tour, right? And I think that man was averaging like 30 points a game against everybody. And mind you, 30 points a game back in the day was a lot, right? Yeah. It's not like now 30 points a game and you might be a team's second best scorer. Man, hand to the man. John Starks, I think, held that man to like 19 points, right? Now, mind you, think about this dude is a 6'8" athletic freak, and John Starks is 6'3", listed at 6'3".
Yeah.
Right? And John Starks held that man to 19 points, right? And here's the thing. People will say, well, throughout the course of the game, now I'm talking about in key possessions, John Starks guarded Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, Clyde Drexler, Mitch Richmond, Chris Mullin, your Tim Hardaways, your Kevin Johnsons, your whoever was the team scorer that Pat couldn't guard, John Starks found his way to that player, and he guarded them and then had to be a combo guard on offense. And so when people compare John Starks' heart to other players that come along after him, I remind y'all, relax, right? Because even though guys put up a lot of counting stats and they love being Knicks, these guys never guarded Michael Jordan for 40 minutes. And even though Jordan scored 37, he probably could have scored 57.
Yeah. Yeah,
why John Starks
is a different breed. He's a different breed.
Heart and soul, lives and dies New York Knicks basketball. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. He just appreciated I remember the first time he was the first player that acknowledged the NY across the chest, and he marked his own N. E-W-Y-O-R-K. All of that. It was, you know what I mean? And it was just, it's moments like that, even through the bad times.
Yeah.
That sustains you.
And AD, is that not what you want from a New York Knicks basketball player? Living and dying this Knicks thing that we also live and die.
You want it, but everybody don't come here for the same things. You understand? And you say you want New York, and then let's use Randall for a second, right? Randall got here at 24. Randall absolutely wanted to be a New York Knick. Okay? Look at the journey. Whether fair or unfair, he did not expect that.
Right.
For one, no one expected pandemic.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
No one his game at that point, he's thinking, I'm just hold on a second. I'm gonna get better. And after season 1, we're like, I know I was like, get out of Dodge, baby.
Yeah.
This ain't for you.
Yeah.
You understand? And this is a person who came here, they kind of snuck 9 players in the back door because of what they didn't get.
Yeah.
And Randall at times embraced it, but he wasn't roundly embraced.
Right.
You're a 2-time All-NBA ball player, and you got maybe 35% of the fan base that's not rocking with you. Maybe even more than that.
But they were loud though. They were loud.
Yeah. See what I'm saying? John Starks, he never faced that. He faced the after effects, and he's always gonna, get this because I'm sure he relives it. Game 7.
Yep.
So people's disrespect for him. I won't even say disrespect, but people's grading of him may fall just because of Game 7.
Yeah, that's because they don't understand what Game 6 was, and they don't understand that late season push. If it wasn't for John Starks and that late season push in '94, bro, the Knicks may not have even gotten past Atlanta in the playoffs. You remember the Steve Smith, Mookie Blaylock, Atlanta Hawks, Stacey Augmon.
He should have sat out. He had major surgery in season. And came back like 4 weeks later.
With the thing on his leg. With the thing on his leg.
We forget that. Yeah. We just look at the end result. So a lot of what you just mentioned a while ago, I'm sure people in the chat, do you even remember that?
Yeah, bro.
The brace on the leg all the way. Do you remember how long he was out in season to come back? He did a Terrell Owens before Terrell.
Yep. Because he lived and died.
Yeah, he lived and died. So he's definitely, but let's throw up the next one. Salute to John.
So I'm gonna put the next one up here. This is obvious. He probably could have went up here first, but
of course.
Yeah. And remember everybody, this is just a list. It's not a ranking. I'm not saying that John Starks is ranked higher than John Starks. It's just a list. All I'm going to say about Clyde Frazier is this. There is an era pre-Clyde Frazier, and then it's what we know. Right? Pre-Clyde Frazier, there was a thing. And Clyde Frazier, after Clyde Frazier got here, it was everything about the culture, bro. Everything Knicks right now to this day was established because of Clyde Frazier. Not because of Willis. Willis was a great player that played hard, right? A great man. Willis Reed was a great man, a great public-facing man, right? But everything we know about Knicks basketball, and even ourselves, some parts, is because of Clyde Frazier, bro. When we talk about being great at your job, enjoying it, and being slick with it, that's Clyde Frazier.
Yeah. Most people will only know him for, his gift to Gab.
Posting and toasting.
Swishing and dishing. Yeah. The neophyte, and the way how he turns a phrase, and for me, I love how Clyde puts it down. You know what I mean? I love how some things that I wouldn't wear myself. He's never gonna sell me on the cow suit.
No, never.
Never gonna sell me on the cow suit. But that's part of the staple as well, what you know him for. But he's had so many other, when you see the early pictures of him, like, I thought his name was Clyde. Man's name is Walt.
That man's name is Walt.
Man's name is Walt. But when you saw him, hop out of the all white Rolls Royce with the fur on
in 1969.
Yeah, 69 with the fur on, the gator shoes. It's like, you wanted to be that guy.
How you drive the Rolls Royce on the money y'all were making back then?
You wanted to be that guy,
bro.
From then till now, it's the reason why Puma brought him back and reestablished the relationship and gave him a lifetime contract.
Right.
Because he was Puma's first. Remember Pumas back then? The blue and white suede?
Yeah, man.
What?
Yeah, man.
You had to have your toothbrush
Yep.
on site in a moment.
in a
If
moment.
anything has scratched and scratched, what? No.
Nah, hold on, girl. Wait right there. Let me hold on.
Right there. You see them fat laces right there? I ironed those before I put them in. You
You
know what I mean? I ironed those. The
if you
double
ain't never
loops.
seen, you ever saw Crush Groove? If you ain't never
What?
seen Crush
Exactly.
Groove and watching Buffy ironing his shoelaces,
Rest in peace, Buff. Right? That's what it was.
Yeah, man.
So he engineers a whole cool, that the NBA, there were other guys with style and stuff like that in the NBA. Doc had style and stuff, but they weren't in New York.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like nobody gave him a name like Clyde. Like, dude, that hat you got on reminds me of Bonnie and Clyde. Clyde Barrow from that great movie. I haven't seen that in a minute. I may touch on it. And if you remember the scene that they was robbing banks.
Robin Banks. Robin Banks, bro. This is what
I love that movie.
Bro.
You know what? There's a scene in that movie, Freezy. It was also with Faye Dunaway and the Clyde's name skipped the actor. His name
was it Warren Beatty?
Warren Beatty. Right? Where he ain't really about anything but her. And his love for her is not based on, because she looks that good and great. So he tried to prove himself physically to her as any man, would when you see something like that. Right? And when it didn't happen and she didn't make him feel any other way, he realized like, yo, she's really ready to ride for me, and maybe this can get better later on, but she didn't just off the top push me to the side, and she understands what I'm about, and she's really ready to rock. Now, but disclaimer, that's not a lifestyle that people should ever want to adapt to, but I'm just talking about the scene in itself and how their relationship is unfolding.
Yeah.
But back with Clyde, we 2 championships in 3 years, Freezy.
Let me draw the distinction to what you said though. Let me just do this right here, just real quick, right? So the bank robbing thing, for those that don't know who Clyde Frazier is, Clyde Frazier was the epitome of a New York staple. If you ever heard the term pickpocket, if you ever heard the word robber, stick up, Clyde Frazier on defense would smother you. Clyde Frazier was like a coat that you put on. He was going to be on you like that the whole game. And if you ever let that basketball get away from your body, Clyde was laying it up the other way. Right?
He'd pick you.
Yeah, and so like so mind you, I don't remember the Clyde in his prime. I remember the older Clyde. I was like a little kid. I was a baby, like 6, 7, 8 years old, right before Clyde was traded, right? But my thing is though with Clyde is this: the legend of Clyde was so crazy in an era where New York City was on fire, right? So I used to spend the summers, like spend time in the Bronx during the summertime, right? As a little kid. And I remember thinking that this can't be real life. I wake up every day smelling smoke. There's in the Bronx, you wake up every day, you smelling smoke, you go outside.
Navigate 10 random dogs, 20 random dogs just running down the street.
Right. In a pack, digging through your trash. You had to put the trash on the street early in the morning for the trash.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you look up the block and somebody's car is on fire. You know what I'm saying? You like, bro, the Bronx, New York was like at that time, I didn't know what a war zone was like at that time. Later on, I come to find out, and something I wish I didn't. But at that time, I didn't know what a war zone was like, bro. But as a kid, you're like broken glass everywhere, right? Buildings on fire, cars on fire, random dogs running down the street with a shoe in his mouth, random stray dog digging through your trash. You trying to run them off? Get out of it.
No.
And in that time, you're thinking, because to me, the Bronx and Jersey City were the same, except Jersey City was probably more compact than the Bronx. I'm not gonna say smaller, but more compact than the Bronx or whatever. And so you realize all these things, and then you go outside, and then your homeboys and them come outside. Rico and them come from down the street. He dribbling the basketball. He probably have you know how you have a basketball for so long. It's bright. It start turning tan. You know what I'm saying? Rico, you can hear Rico dribbling the ball down to your grandfather's crib, and then all you do is stand outside all day, is dribble the basketball, and talk about the Clyde Frazier poster. Now, if you don't remember the Clyde Frazier poster, the Puma poster, this is before the Iceman cometh, right? This is before the greatest. To me, the greatest basketball poster ever is the George Gervin Iceman cometh, right? But before the Iceman cometh poster, the Clyde Frazier poster, the city where Clyde is in front of the Rolls Royce with the Puma around it.
God,
the most iconic poster ever. And back then you couldn't afford it because I think the poster was like $3. AD,
you had to find, and posters meant something to us.
Yes,
like baseball cards. It meant something to us. I don't know. It's just to capture, to see your guy or someone you really like, have respect for in a moment.
Right.
Like the Iceman cometh, he's not on the court. No! You know what I mean? But here he comes. And all these cold ass points you're gonna get. Here's a man who never sweat on the basketball court.
Bro. Yes.
Ever.
For those that don't know, George Gervin is from Detroit, and Detroit's culture back then was you had to be cool, bro. Like you had to be cool, right? You know what I'm saying? Like
another level. What up, though? It's another level of cool. Another level of cool.
And in the city, when I was little, you had to be slick. You had to be slick with the words. You always had to be dry. You know what I'm saying? Be fly. You know what I'm saying? That was a thing, right? But Clyde Frazier, just real quick, so we don't stay too long on Clyde, man. But Clyde Frazier was the first, or no, let me take that back. Clyde Frazier was the second totally complete guard to ever play in the NBA. The first complete guard was Jerry West, right? Jerry West probably got more steals than Clyde, but Clyde Frazier's defense was way better than Jerry West, even though Jerry West was an excellent defender. Right. Now, when I say Jerry West and Clyde, Jerry West was a better shooter and had a greener light than Clyde, but Clyde played in a system where they took pride in sharing the basketball, and everybody touched it, and everybody scored. And come to find that Clyde probably could have averaged 25, 26 points. Clyde could have averaged 25 and 10 if he wanted to, right?
Clyde to Jerry is like what Kyrie was to Steph.
Right.
It's like history may remember you better than me, right? But you and I know when the game was on the line, like Jerry West is the logo.
Yep.
I stained the logo.
Yep.
36, 19, and 7.
And 7 in a game 7.
You'll go down in history, greater ball player than me, Jerry.
Right.
But I got the moment.
Right.
I got that. Well, Willis has the moment, but I carried it home.
Right.
See what I'm saying? I carried it home against Baylor, West, Chamberlain. When when you just speak those names, you should have permission to speak those names.
You should ask for permission
on the same team.
Yep.
I'd have bet my house the Knicks are not beating them. That's the original David and Goliath story, because here comes, and I know we're gonna get to him, and I don't want to veer from this, but here comes the captain.
Yep. And so AD, and the thing about Clyde is this, that people don't always, that they don't give him credit for. Clyde Frazier's entire life is centered around being great in his lane, but supporting others in their lane, right? And what better teammate can you have than to somebody that is great by themselves, but a force when he's with somebody else, right? Like, legitimately, Clyde, if it wasn't for Clyde Frazier's game, the Willis Reed coming out the tunnel thing doesn't even matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's just an entrance.
It doesn't. It would be like a speck in time.
Yep.
It wouldn't matter. It really wouldn't. But Clyde said that when Reed walks out, Wes, Chamberlain, and Baylor, they were done.
He probably told the story.
They were done.
The one I heard was, as soon as they put the spotlight on the door, and then Willis Reed walked in, Clyde, he said, I whipped around to look at the Lakers, and they all dropped their heads because they knew we were coming.
They were done. And somehow, and Willis only hits the first two shots.
And limps the rest of the game.
This is the, and like I said, it's hard to speak this man's name or any of those guys on the Lakers team without the most reverence, right?
Yeah.
Your Willis Reed, your Wilt Chamberlain, who's the greatest big offensive force that this game has ever seen. And you watching Willis limp up and down the court.
Yeah.
And I'm not banging it in your throat.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, I'm going to turn around and be like, Red, you better get him off me.
Right. Yeah.
Red, what? Bang. He only 6'9". I'm all of 7'2".
Yeah.
I'm going to do you dirty.
Yep.
There's no way a one-legged man hopping up, and I'm Wilt. Yeah. That's the one thing with Wilt when people knock on him. It's like you had the powers that mere mortals just don't possess.
Right.
And in a Game 7 moment like that, you mesmerized by a dude on one leg. Can't fly.
Let me do this, AD, because I think the Willis Reed thing, the Willis Reed story, people don't realize what Willis Reed was great. Willis Reed was the league MVP in 1970, right? And he deserved it, right? Willis Reed could, and everybody, when I say he could have done such and such, he could have done such and such.
He had a trifecta, did he not?
I think so. I think
so. I think he was All-Star MVP too.
Yep. All-Star game MVP also.
I think in the same year, and I don't think Clyde wasn't Finals MVP. I don't think.
No, I think Clyde was Finals MVP.
Was Clyde Finals MVP? Okay. I thought Willis was Finals. Okay, but go ahead.
So the thing about Willis, real quick, Willis Reed was a great player. He just didn't have enough to get them over the hump, and they drafted Clyde. Like, Willis Reed was a second-round pick that just showed up off the radar out of the blue. He's a second-round pick out of Grambling. When you draft a guy like that, you don't expect him to be anything, right? The Knicks already had a center that they drafted in the first round that was just putting up numbers. Like, I think what was the guy name? He was putting up
Walt Bellamy.
Walt Bellamy was like putting up like 23 and 14 every night. but the Knicks couldn't win with him, right? And so numbers aren't everything, y'all. So one of the things that we notice is after the Walt Bellamy trade, because Willis legitimately is a power forward, but the Knicks chose to play small ball in a sense, right? Where Dave DeBusschere is 6'6", Bill Bradley is 6'6", Earl the Pearl is 6'4", Clyde is 6'4" and a half, Willis is 6'9", in an era where teams are trying to get taller and taller and taller, even if the dude couldn't play. Like I know y'all remember like the 7-footers, y'all like he tall for y'all remember that but anyway, Willis Reed was a very, very, very good player, probably a top somewhere in the top 7 of Knicks of all time. I want to place him in the top 4 of all time, but wherever you place him, that's your prerogative, right? But what I wanted to do, AD, before we run out of time, because I want to make sure we get because I feel an argument is coming, and I want to give the argument the respectfully the amount of time it deserves, right? So, AD, I'm going to add this name to the list, and even though I think it probably shouldn't be there. Chat, what y'all think? The man only played 208 games as a Knick.
He's on my list. Doesn't even make sense. I'm never going to argue that he's on my 20. He only paid 200 but it was some of the most impactful, games. Let's understand this, Freezy. When Bernard gets here, he doesn't get here as the savior. He gets here as reclamation project for reclamation project.
He gets his a cast off.
Yeah, not a cast off per se, because he's
no, not a cast off to us, but a cast off
from other teams, from Utah and Golden State and the Nets. By the time he gets to the Knicks, he'd already been on 3 teams.
Yeah.
Right, but something inside of him clicked.
Yeah.
Once he got back to New York, once he got back to his roots, and mind you, if you've seen his story, he's a lot of pain in those roots.
Yeah.
But he gets back to New York, and the Knicks in that first series against Philly in '83 kind of announced like, we're back.
Yeah.
Right? And I think he averaged that year, what did he average? 26, I think. 26 for the season or something like that, or 25, something like that. But it was kind of like Jalen Brunson's first year with the Knicks, where it was like, all right, we got something.
Yeah.
And then the following year, it only gets worse.
Yeah.
His teammates are getting worse because they remove Maurice Lucas.
Yeah.
Enters in Chuck Robinson. Who's washed by this time. They're drafting Darryl Walker and stuff like that, and his teammates are getting
Webster. His
teammates are getting worse, but he's getting better.
Yeah,
look at his numbers.
Yeah.
He has the iconic Game 5 against Isaiah, Joe Louis Arena.
Yeah.
When Isaiah dropped 16 in 93 seconds.
Yeah.
If a man can score 16 points in 93 seconds, you should probably just give them the win.
You should just give it to him, bro. And this is Isaiah with Kelly Tripucka and what's the other guy?
Kelly Tripucka.
And what's the other white guy? The other
Benson.
No, not Vincent. Eventually went to the Celtics.
No, Benson.
What was you talking about? Vinson?
No.
Okay.
God, I know that. Grant Long. Earl. was it? Oh God, what's his last name? I know that team. Vinny Johnson. You know, young Lambert. I don't think was Lambert. I think Lambert's on that team.
Remember, Lambert got there in his remember first year Isaiah Thomas got there and the league beat him up because he was too fast. Remember that? And then they traded and got Bill Lambert off of Cleveland's bench, right? And then the next year they traded and got what's his name?
Earl Cureton, son. Yes, son. I'm sorry, Freezy. Earl Cureton. Yes.
Yeah.
And Benson. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if you go back just to stay with that game for a second, the Knicks are like winning. This game is like over.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this dude just goes bananas.
Yeah.
And you have to stem the tide.
Yeah.
Bernard King comes into the game with like 103-degree fever. I think he gets sicker. It goes up to like 108 by the time the game was over.
Yeah.
He died and came back at halftime.
Yeah, and with taped fingers.
He got two split fingers on each hand from both of them, right?
Yeah.
And yet still, at the very end of the game, your great coach, who I never thought he was a great coach, great analyst, not a great coach, Hubie Brown is drawing up a play for someone other than Bernard King.
Yeah.
Who had already had 42 points by this time.
Yeah.
But this, if you remember Hubie at the time, Hubie had the perm. Hubie had the perm. He had the perm. The man is drawing up a play for somebody other than Bernard. Bernard said,
they all had perms, man. They all had perms.
He said he told Hubie, do you mind if I take the last shot? Come on now. What are we doing?
Bro, what are we doing, bro?
His putback at the time was like Ewing's putback 10 years later.
Yeah.
When he comes through,
yeah, bro. Yeah.
Put it on their head. It's like, all right, enough. You valiant effort, but we walking out with this.
Can I give you this?
Okay?
Yeah.
Me, Ray Williams, Chuck Robinson, Cartwright, all of us. We walking out with this.
Was Lewis on there?
Lewis Orr's on the team.
Yo, let me ask you this, because
Ernie Grunfeld.
was there, yeah.
Grunfeld's on the team. We walking out with this.
Yeah.
He's that good, Freezy. When you then he goes on to play Boston, in the semis. Takes them to game 7. Scores over 40 on every other game he scores 40. Maxwell said he wouldn't get 40 at all.
Yep. You remember Cornbread Maxwell?
Maxwell said he wasn't going to get 40 at all. The defense, he's one of the first players that had a shift. Literally one side of a defense. So your backline center, your forward who's guarding him, and whatever guard is on that angle right there, they're forming a triangle against him in the post.
In the post, yes.
Right? And he could catch. This man could literally catch and spin and
Yep.
Or if he caught you and the two guys was like, all three of you are surrounding me. He had that first jab step, that left jab step, with the quick pull up. Everything about him was just precise, quick. When you see him on the break, it wasn't anything extra. It was just he was gonna outrace you on the wing. Can you imagine Bernard King today shooting out to the 3?
Oh my God!
On a fast break, a 6'7" Colt.
Hey, AD, I'm gonna say this, right? I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound mad OD, and I'm gonna sound like a homer, but I think it's true. I think from 1982 to the injury, Bernard King was the second best player in the NBA, right? Larry Bird clearly was number 1 from 82, and the record books say it. The man won the MVP all those years, I think, right?
3 straight years, I believe.
Yeah. But the second best player in that era, and I'm including Adrian Dantley, Kareem, um, um, what's the guy from Golden State? Purvis, was it Purvis Short? Remember the guy from Golden
Very
State?
short. Yeah.
The scoring
None of
machine.
them. They had Aguirre.
Yeah, Mark Aguirre in Dallas.
Ellis. Out in Denver. What's my my small forward out in Denver? Who scored all those points? None of them.
Yeah, Alex English.
Alex English. None of them.
Bro,
Keep Vandaway.
Ever, bro.
A latter part Doc. I mean, anybody who was a small forward, you didn't want no parts of Bernard King.
Nope.
In that era, at that time in his before knee injury, you wanted nothing to do with him.
Nope.
The man scored 60 points on a losing Christmas Day.
Yep. Because
I thought we won the game, Freezy, as a little kid. I was like,
he was scoring.
I was like, Bernard scored 60. My uncle was like, shut up. Y'all lost.
Right.
Lost.
Right. Let me do this. I want to add, for the sake of time, I'm just going to add a couple of Knicks here. We'll talk about them. Maybe we could talk about them in passing, but I want to do add a couple of names to the list so that we won't forget them. So Allen Houston for sure is part of the new era of Knicks basketball, right? Also want to add I want to get to this person in case we don't get a chance to finish.
We could do part one. We're trying to get 20 names. We're not going to get all 20 in. Yeah, but we could do part one, part two.
Yeah. Maybe we could do part two, like maybe during the summer, maybe because of the season coming up. We
got too much. We can't. It's too much of an impact for Allen Houston and his career growth and just his growth here. Because if you remember when he came here, as we talked about with John Starks earlier, he got a fat check. He got a hell of a bag.
Yep.
And the first thing we noticed with him was like, wow, he can't play defense like John Starks.
No, right. That's the first thing we noticed.
He doesn't seem to have the same temperament. Well, not seem. He doesn't have the same temperament like John.
Not externally.
Right. Externally, he doesn't have it. He doesn't seem to. He's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like things are easy for him. He can glide up, and then when you see him rise, he has one of the prettiest jump shots this game has ever seen.
And he is extremely fundamental. He's probably the most fundamentally sound basketball player the Knicks have. He was extremely fundamentally sound and disciplined.
Yeah, and he was way more athletic than people remember.
Because the thing is with people that are so smooth that they don't need a chaser, right? It looks like they always are doing things maybe not as fast.
In slow-mo.
but they're doing it at the same pace. They just make it look easy, right? That's the thing I always noticed about Allen Houston, right? Like Allen Houston legitimately is the epitome of a bucket getter. But one of the things about Allen Houston that people don't give him credit for is you rarely saw Allen Houston get in a shooting slump. You rarely saw Allen Houston go 3 games of bad shooting, regardless who the defenders were. It didn't matter. You rarely saw Allen Houston in a shooting slump, whether it was at the free throw line, from the floor, from 3, it didn't matter. Allen Houston never went into these extended things where you're wondering what else can he do while his shot is not falling.
Right. And I agree with you there. But here's my thing with Allen. This is up to the injury, right? I think he could have been so much better because when it was rumored that it was either him, Smith from Atlanta, or Reggie Miller, and I believe the Knicks had a deal with Reggie Miller.
Yeah.
Right? I believe they actually had a deal with Reggie Miller in place, and something last second management decided they wanted to go younger, right?
Yeah.
When he comes here, it's like a car that has a carburetor. You know what I'm saying? It takes a long time to start. And especially in the winter. Remember that? Remember carburetors? Before fuel injection? You literally got to leave your car in the wintertime to warm up a half an hour.
You remember Rack and Pinion?
Oh, my God.
Rack and Pinion.
Oh, my God.
You remember that before power steering?
Yeah. So he was kind of like that. It took him a minute to get going. And then you had the pressure of, John Starks, fan favorite, beloved.
Yeah.
It's not until that game 5, that Sunday afternoon, when he has his moment, and a well-deserved moment. And he earned that. Because if you remember the play, the Knicks really should have never got the ball back, because when Hardaway taps the ball out of Sprewell's hands, it literally slides off the back of Sprewell's leg.
Yep, I remember. Yep.
And we're up, we're down 1 with like 15 seconds to go or something. And if they had replay at that point, I'm surprised that Riley didn't protest, as more stronger than he did. Yeah. And then when Allen gets the ball now, because Sprewell was going to go nut.
Yeah.
If Sprewell had the ball, if he would have been able to get, he was going to go take that shot.
Of course. Right?
But
he earned that though.
He did. But here's my thing with it, right? If I'm drawing up a play right there and I'm not going to go to Ewing, Ewing's not my first option because Ewing is, he's hobbling, he's hurt, he's this, that, but he's giving you a gritty game 5 performance, and he's older. Allen is my guy. Allen has a better jump shot. Why am I going to Spree first before Al? One, Spree had the attitude of, I can get it done.
And he had the athletic advantage over Marley, Mashburn, and Hardaway. And Anthony Carter. You remember Anthony Carter?
Right. But his setup for attack, like if you're defending him right then and there, I'm not scared of his jump shot. Right? I'm scared he's going to drive by me because that's what he was trying to do. And Hardaway went tap. And the ball goes, slightly, very slight, off his shin, out of bounds. Allen gets his opportunity. And if you remember in the end of the play, Allen thinks he missed the shot because he's the first one there up to try and put it back in, and he doesn't touch it.
Yep.
He just lets it falls in, and he goes, running down the court, and he throws that powerful fist
straight to the camera.
Straight to the camera. You had never seen Allen Houston act like that a day in his life.
Yep.
But he went, take that.
Right. One of the most iconic moments in Knicks history.
It's a hell of a moment. It was, that Sunday afternoon, it was like, oh my God, the party can begin now. Like, we're going to go on a run. I felt we were going to go on a run.
Bro, Allen Houston was Mr. Automatic in my mind. Like when I think back to the Allen Houston era, I think about clunky offenses. I think about weird roster construction. I think about the climate around the league going from the Last Dance into the new millennium. You know what I'm saying? You think about all these different things, and the thing that helped us go from that post Bulls dynasty into the Spurs dynasty into where we are today is Allen Houston. Allen Houston is the linchpin, and he should be higher on a lot of our lists, not just because of he was rock steady. And for those that grew up in the streets or adjacent to the streets, right? Rock steady means dependable.
Yeah.
Right. Rock steady means dependable. If you got people that are rock steady in your life, you can count on them. Right. They're not going to be flaky. That they're going to always be in that spot where you can always go to them. Right. And so it's one of those things. Allen Houston deserves credit. I see Allen Houston on a lot of people's lists of top Knicks of all time somewhere between 7 and 20, right? And in my mind, Allen Houston, for his contributions to the Knicks, should be higher on the list, somewhere between 7 and 12. There's no way. There's no way Allen Houston should be any lower on a list than 12, right? Because I think Allen Houston, of course, Allen Houston can't be in the Carmelo Bernard King conversation, and he definitely can't be in the Pat Ewing and Clyde Frazier conversation, right? But in that third tier of you're thinking like, ooh, maybe Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, in that era of a guy that came from somewhere else to be the leader of the team for a little while, Allen Houston deserves to be in that category. And the reason why I have Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle and Allen Houston together is because those three played for a team for 4 years, left that situation, came to New York, and basically, in theory, put a team on their back. Now, all of their results are different, right? The results are different. Allen Houston got the Knicks to what was it, three Eastern Conference Finals and one final?
Yep.
Right. So 3 Eastern Conference Finals and 1 finals. But even though they had varying degrees of result, I think Allen Houston should be in the conversation because not only did he leave Detroit and come play for the Knicks and stayed with the Knicks since his retirement, he's also represented the Knicks in a way that you want your franchise to be represented.
But, there's two things there, Freezy, that you said. And I agree with you and I disagree with you because you can say that he makes a bigger impact than Melo and Bernard, even though they both came here and kind of put.
I didn't say that. I didn't mean it.
No, I'm saying you could say instead of him being in the necessary Jalen Brunson Randle category per se,
right?
He makes a bigger impact than Carmelo Anthony does because he gets the team to a finals.
Yeah,
point blank, period.
See, but AD, that I agree, and I don't mean to cut you.
And he has two iconic moments on the way to get there.
But AD, but people were on the roster with Allen Houston. Is the separator?
Yeah, but here's the thing: in that moment, Larry Johnson is at the hospital. Patrick Ewing has torn his Achilles.
Yeah.
There's no real front line. You really have it's Allen, Sprewell, Childs, an amazing Canby, and
Ward,
and when Johnson gets back. Those are like the best of what you have left.
Okay.
And in his game 6 against Indiana, when everything is falling down and you don't want to get to a game, you don't want to go back to Indiana for a game 7.
Yeah.
When he drops that 34 points, which, as you said, 30 points back then in the playoffs, that's a major accomplishment.
That's like 60 right now.
Yeah. He drops that 34 and he's isolated against Jalen on the wing a couple of times, and they have no defender that can stop him. No defender that can, and he's getting by them with that pump fake jab step. Step up on, he's going around you. He's not even dunking when he gets there. He's beautifying it.
Yeah.
Right? I could yam it, but you know what? It looks so much prettier with this.
With the soft kiss off the glass.
With the soft like he was just
God,
when he to me, I thought he had more of those moments if he had of a personality that was naturally more so aggressive. Right? It took him a minute to get to that run. Finally, a minute to really. He was the best player in that series, Freezy.
Yeah, he was. Of course.
Right? And when it came down to it, like, you don't get to the finals without him.
Right.
Like, he literally said, we're not going to a game 7.
But let me say this on Allen Houston's behalf, because I think that's one of the things about Allen Houston that I think people sleep on. Allen Houston went from a wide open offense in Detroit. Remember the remember the Pistons transitioned from the Bad Boys Pistons to the Lindsey Hunter, Grant Hill, Allen Houston. Why? You remember when they used to wear the horse on these shirts?
Yeah.
Remember that? They changed entire uniforms to get away from the Bad Boys Pistons image,
Yes.
right?
Foolishly.
Yeah, foolishly. Now we know it was foolish. Back then, we didn't know if it was But Allen Houston went from a wide open offense in Detroit where defense was optional. Maybe I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna say they didn't play D. I think they were more centered on. They probably had one of the more slept on athletic point guards of an era in Lindsey Hunter, who was an athletic freak. Right. Maybe the passing wasn't there. Maybe he was raw. But when you put Lindsey Hunter, Allen Houston, Grant Hill, and they had one other person. Who was there? Who was there for 80?
You could just stop right there. They had Mills from out of Chicago,
Michigan.
From Michigan.
Terry Mills. He looked like George Foreman in the face.
Yes, he did. Rest in peace to George. Yeah. We'll get there. But look at that young team and the organizational moves that they've made, right? They have Allen Houston and Grant Hill pre-injury.
Yeah, both. Yeah, yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You let them both walk out the door.
Yeah.
What are you doing? See what I'm saying? Like, what justification could you actually make that makes sense when you are Detroit Pistons? You're a staple in this league.
My guy played. I'm looking at the roster. One of my homeboys, man, one of my best friends in life, man. I ain't talked to him in a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
My guy, so it's a dude named Raphael Addison.
From Syracuse.
Yeah, we used to we grew up together on Dwight Street. Like I used to live on Van Nostrand, and they used to be on Dwight Street, man. I used to come down, man, and hang out with them guys. Him, me. When I say these names, everybody, I'm gonna get back to the conversation, but I'm gonna say these names are gonna make you laugh. But me, a guy named Terry DeHare, a guy named Luther Wright, Raphael Addison, David Rivers, Roderick Rhodes was our shorty. Roderick Rhodes was like 10 years younger than us. He was like a baby. Danny Hurley was a young pup baby with us. Bobby Hurley, and who else? It was like Kenny Washington. That was my center. A guy named when I say his name, bro, it's gonna be you remember the point guard from the Memphis Grizzlies, the white guy that was with the crazy handles? White chocolate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Our point guard in high school was a guy named Jason, but Jason was about 6'3" in 9th grade and was doing all that stuff. And guess what we used to call him back then? White chocolate.
Almond Joy.
Yeah, right. How many Musketeers in the building, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
To your, if Raphael Addison was on that roster with the Pistons, yes, they were athletic because Raphael Addison was an athletic freak, bro.
They had a good young core, but like I said, those two, the forward and the guard, they just let them walk out the building.
Yeah,
and you wonder why they struggled for so long.
Right.
Joe Dumars, although wins a championship with them, he was a horrible executive for a good long minute.
Yeah.
They just kept giving out money to guys that it just made no sense.
Yeah.
For a good minute, Detroit until they got in between 2004, and then after that, after the championship run, they're like what are we doing?
Yeah, I think that the mandate was hurry up and get us back to title contention, and the approach should have been the last dance. That's what their approach should have been.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, Freezy, I gotta leave it there. So let's pick up next week with Mello, or the next time we come back on. Let's pick up with Mello.
The next time we do it, we'll start with Carmelo Anthony, because I think Melo. I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound crazy.
Oh boy!
But I think Carmelo is a top 3 Knick of all time.
Woo!
and sorry for non-King fans. Non-King fans, I know you didn't hear me say that, right?
Yes, indeed. And on that note, I don't know where this journey started, but we know where it ended. Once again, it ended with you. Salute to the chat. Knicks family for life. Look for me and Freezy in the whirlwind. Garvey.
Yeah. Look out your window. Knicks fans is on your block. Y'all know the Knicks run the city. Pull them shades back. Look out your window. Look down there on the block. That's Knicks fans right there. It's about that time. It's about that time of the week where you get ready for your work week with the man that is so smooth he does not require a chaser. Your main man, the real Anthony D.